It's funny how sometimes one can write off a game without actually understanding it. You might see a screenshot and misinterpret what the game's mechanics are about, and just move on to the next one to check out. Sometimes, though, a nudge in the right direction can lead you to giving something a second chance and realising those first impressions were wrong. And believe it or not, this even happens to me on occasion. As it did with Shovel Adventure: The Next Quest. Released in 2022, this is a Spectrum Next enhanced upgrade to the original Shovel Adventure, developed by the Pat Morita Team, released the year prior on both the Amstrad CPC and classic ZX Spectrum machines. Not really going to recount the plot because the game's introduction covers it here. You're adventurer Johnny Palace and you've got to puzzle your way through 50 levels of a Great Pyramid to locate the treasures within. In other words, this is a game all about grave robbing. Once again, under the guise of archaeology, of course. Each level takes place on a single screen, and your objective is to dig up all the buried gems. When you've collected them all, an Ankh will be revealed, which you have to collect before you leg it for the exit and move on to the next screen. Now, if that was only all you needed to do to succeed, well, I guess it is, but the big thing that's running against you is the time limit placed on each screen. 60 seconds might seem like plenty of time, at least early on, but it wasn't long before I found myself clearing these stages with only a scant handful of seconds remaining. Learning to clear them fast is critical because it lets you earn more points from the end of level bonus. The real threat for Shovel Adventure, of course, is the wandering enemies. Whether you're running into shambling mummies, slithering snakes, or bothersome beetles, contact with them will likely kill you. Or, in the case of touching a beetle, poisoning you, leaving you temporarily incapacitated. You can outwit them, most of them anyway, by digging in an empty square. Should a beetle or a mummy fall in, they'll be temporarily trapped. But you could also get your Heiankyo alien on and fill those holes in for extra points. Something worth considering, as you'll earn an extra life for every 5,000 you earn. But I'd say doing that blindly isn't necessarily a good idea. Caution is warranted, because enemies defeated in this way will respawn at the exit door, after a brief delay of course. But, and this is kind of a big but, you might just find yourself giving yourself some extra challenges depending on how the level's designed. An enemy that was safely in one area might now be in another because of the respawning. You've also got tricks and traps to negotiate as well, from spikes which jut out of the floor should you walk over them, to teleporters which send you to other areas. Careful planning and timing is really needed to get that successful plan down. Otherwise you might just run into an enemy when you're not really planning for it. At every 10th stage, you'll encounter a boss enemy. These remix the game levels somewhat, as all the gems will already be exposed, and you've just got to run about collecting them whilst avoiding whatever hazards the enemies throw your way. Then you get the Ankh, get to the exit, kind of like the other stages. Sure, it's a minor remix of the core mechanics, but it does keep things a little spicy in a nice, unique way. And for me, that's generally how I found things rolling with Shovel Adventure: The Next Quest. You've got a fair challenge to master in all these 50 screens, but the game offers more than a few tricks to learn if you're going to be able to make serious progress in it. Thankfully though, there are more than a few things I found which tilted things somewhat in your favour to give you a leg up on the challenge. Firstly, you've got the power-ups. Now these are randomly situated in the mounds you'll be digging up, and come in one of 4 types. Grabbing the red potion will give you a spurt of invulnerability, allowing you to pass through enemies without being killed. Locating the hourglass will freeze time, stopping enemies and traps from going off and letting you pass through enemies again without a problem. The boots will let you run faster, again letting you sneak past enemies even if they're still a hazard while they're active. And finally, the shovel allows you to dig and fill holes in much faster. It might just save your neck when an enemy gets close because you can trap him with a little extra time to spare. Now, all of these pickups are only active for 10 seconds when collected. That does sound like very little time, but honestly, I found it more than enough to get through a potentially perilous situation. The only real downside to them is that power-ups aren't fixed on each stage. As you play through a stage, one time you might get a power-up at some point, and in another run, you'll get nothing at all. Even if their positions were randomized, at least knowing that you're going to be able to get something on a repeat play of a level might help ease the challenge for you when things were getting a little tricky. But not having a power-up fixed on a level can mean that sometimes things can be easier in a run than it is in another run. I had plenty of times when I would get through a particularly messy part of a stage and luckily get that one power-up that was perfect for me to get through cleanly and solve it. Other times, I'd have no such luck, and I'd be losing lives trying to get through and puzzle my way to the exit. It's a little bit of randomness that I'm not really a big fan of. Which leads into something with the levels. Now, in Shovel Adventure The Next Quest, the levels aren't one-to-one with the original game. Some of these levels have been tweaked in little ways, adding extra traps here and there, and it kind of made them a little harder in ways that I can't say I really appreciated. It made the levels have like one path to victory because you lost freedom of movement because of certain traps being placed in them. And it also made the timing for others a little messier in comparison. It kind of sapped a little enjoyment from me in some of these stages. I mean, a game like this is sort of an action puzzler, and so you expect a bit of that in how you solve levels. But when the puzzling makes it that you've only got a single solution that you have to play precisely to win, it kind of saps the fun out of it for me. And I found myself getting frustrated, particularly after quite a few stages in, where suddenly there was one way to solve each stage. It just wasn't fun the way it was earlier on. Now, there's plenty of great things here. I really love the art style, really using the Spectrum Next's hardware capabilities to enhance the visuals, give them a lot of character, nice color palette, some great sound. But thankfully, there are some things it does for quality of life. Obviously, you've got your high scores being saved to disk when you get on the table, and after every 5 stages, you get the opportunity to save your game. And while it offers 3 save slots, this is not something that you could use to rotate your saves through. Rather, it's sort of like a player profile and other things. But also, these aren't a full save. Rather, you saves that you reach that stage, but when you start a new game from one of those saves, you'll start with 0 points, you'll start with 3 lives, and it means if you want to make that high score table, you've really got to play from the start, from stage 1, rather than continuing on saves. Something else that was included that was a little bonus that I liked is the classic graphics mode. What this does is it changes the art style. So instead of being those lush native Next visuals, you got something that channels a classic Spectrum. It's not one-to-one with how the game looks on the classic Spectrum. The sprites do have more color, but instead of using the Next's full color palette to base everything off, it uses just those original Spectrum colors. It's an interesting look, it's different. I kind of liked it as a bonus, but I think I prefer to play using the Next visual modes. Obviously, this mode doesn't introduce color clash, so yeah, it's a nice difference. I liked it, but yeah, it's cool that it's as an option. I mean, I guess, so this brings up the question. Does Shovel Adventure The Next Quest offer enough to be an upgrade to that original CPC or Spectrum version to make it worth your time checking out? Now, I haven't really played that original version. I pretty much hopped straight onto the next release here because I was curious, and honestly, I do like having more games on the Next. But the thing is, for me, I think it still offers enough. Like being able to save your progress, even if it does cost you score, it really helps with convenience. I mean, I can continue to work my way through this game as I play through. And the boss additions, I think, are a nice one for just making things a little different. It's good to have that little spark of something different from time to time. I'll admit, I'm not 100% with some of the level designs. I did watch a walkthrough of that original version of the game, the original Spectrum version, and I think some of the levels were better there. But I guess if you treat it like an extended version for the expert players, you might find it a little less frustrating to work through, at least compared to my own experiences with it. It doesn't really push the Spectrum next to its limits, and it's not a long and expansive game. I expect a run might take a couple of hours at best, but it's more than fun enough, and at least at the time of recording, is still available physically. It's also available digitally for a pretty fair price, making it a fantastic option to get. All up, I really think it's time to wrap this one up. There's not much more for me to say. If you enjoyed the video, why not check the game out for yourself? The links are going to be in the video description, and hop into the comments and express some thoughts. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning the notifications on. Yes, I know, these things are annoying, but it really helps. And check out the links in the description for also just some of the other things you can do to help support the show. But really, what's just left for me to say is to thank you all for watching.